lovely to have the one and only David Ellefson here on Overdrive with me today. How are you doing? It's fantastic to see you.
I am doing well. Yeah, nice to chat with you.
Awesome.
How's everything? How's everything in Ireland?
It's good. The sun is shining, and that's all that we can ask for right now.
just like in Scottsdale, Arizona. How lucky are we?
Awesome. Well, look, the reason that we're talking today, I mean, you are super busy. Like, you have a lot going on. I was just kind of reviewing all the stuff, all the kind of pots you have on the hob at the moment, and there is a lot going on. But but what's coming down the line is this fantastic album, debut album from Dieth, this amazing project that you have going with Guillemay, ex-Entombed, and Mikael from ex-Decapitated. So let's jump straight into that. Dude, it's just, I was not prepared for how fucking heavy this thing was. I mean, it just took my face clean off. And I suppose the first thing to do is, how in the hell did this group of people, why did you get together with the guys? How did it come about?
You know, it had to be divine, because there's no, how do you get an American, a Brazilian, and a Polish guy in a room together, right? It's like, sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? What happens when an American, a Polish guy, and a Brazilian walk into a bar, right? And I guess this is the result. You know, but all kidding aside, you know, it was, I was just introduced to Guillermo on email, January 2022, you know, new year, new month, new music, new beginnings, and our first song, In the Hall of the Hanging Serpents, we recorded it, mixed it. I was over in Europe shortly thereafter. We got together in Gdansk, Poland, where we based the group. That's where our drummer, Mikael, lives there. And we shot the video for it. I said, why don't we just randomly throw this up on my Facebook in July? So let's see what happens, you know, and got quite the reaction. Yeah, huge. I mean, like 100,000 views within a couple of days, and Napalm's knocking at our door, Napalm Records. You know, that was 2022. I mean, really, the whole from start to finish was 2022, and we shot some music videos back in November and December, and I went back over again and shot another one in March. So I mean, we're cranking, you know, and it's one of these groups that when we're in the room, man, a lot happens, and it happens fast, and there's just great synergy about it, and that's the backstory.
Was it a kind of a collective idea between the three of you, or did the guys kind of have this loose idea and then approached you with it? I mean, you know. Yeah,
I mean, I think, look, Guillermo, you know, Entombed was over. You know, that band was done. Mihal had moved on a few years ago from Decapitated. Of course, I was recently out of Megadeth. And so it was just kind of this moment. You know, my friend Christian, he's in a band out in Connecticut called Dead by Wednesday, and I put out some records for him on Combat Records. He's played in my solo band and with me and Frank Bello. He's a drummer. So, you know, he's the one who made the introduction, you know, so God bless Christian, because he, you know, he just knew, I think, you know, he knew Guillermo, and, you know, I said, hey, I'm looking for a bass player, do you know anyone? And, you know, and so Christian said, I don't know, how about Ellefson? You know, so it's just, you know, it's just one of these things, man. You can't explain it. It's greater than the sum of its parts. And I think, you know, you feel it in the music. It's organic. This isn't a Pro Tooled record that we just sucked all the life out of it. I mean, you hear the scratchiness and the grit, and you know, and I love making a record like that again, man. It's really, it's back to how we did it when we had no time and no money, and let's go.
People sort of assume that this is like a, you know, it's a death metal album, but it's not just a one-dimensional death metal album. There's actually loads going on here, and a lot of genres that are fused. And I kind of got the feeling that when this was being recorded, it was, as you said, when you guys get into a room together, it happens fast and it happens naturally. And when this music was coming together, was it extremely just kind of liberating and super sort of fluid, the way, you know, just kind of no barriers there? Let's not restrict anything. Let's just fucking see what flows into this room, and let's just go with it.
Totally. I mean, look, the first tracks were In the Hall of the Hanging Serpents, then probably To Hell and Back. and Wicked Disdain. I mean, these are some of the earlier tracks, and they're pretty heavy, right? And then, then we started working on Free Us All. I sent over Heavy as the Crown, both the lyric and the melody and, all this stuff. And then things started to really be collaborative between us where, I started really jumping in as one of the composers, and Guilherme and I really have a good, I trust him. I trust his instincts with this kind of music. And it's interesting, they're the younger guys. So I'm kind of the student on this one, to be honest with you. I'm a student of their world. In the same way they grew up on my records years ago, and they were students of my work. So, it's fun for me to be teachable and to learn from younger guys and the experiences that they've had. Yet at the same time, we meet toe to toe as professionals, all having had our own pretty extensive experience as composers and in the business. And there was this mindset of just because this is how our old bands operated, we don't have to operate like that. You know what I mean? Like, we get to make up the rules now. We are our new boss, right? So the thing about working for yourself is at least your boss, and so now we become the creators of the next destiny of our lives. In a lot of ways, for us, this record represents the second act of our life.
And you mentioned there about the rehearsals that you had done, and since the track listing on the album and what you guys had written for that album, is there other music as well? Are there new ideas that you're working on?
We're well beyond the better half of album number 2, and again, we're just compiling. We've got a folder. I mean, just last week I sent 3 new song ideas over. Guilherme, is always writing riffs and music and lyrics and stuff, and we don't want to get too committed to it, because what's going to happen this summer is the live experience is going to change now and fortify what album number 2 will be like. So it's a loose idea of what album number 2 can be, but I think we would shortchange ourselves if we jumped into it too soon and we didn't now really reap the harvest of the live experience, because you can definitely take that into the studio on the next record.
But, yeah. I mean, I was just looking at, I mentioned at the start, you are super busy. Like, besides Dieth, you've got the Lucid, you've got the Ellefson Soto, you've got Kings of Thrash. I mean, are you even more busy now than when you were in Megadeth? I mean, you've got a lot of these things going on.
100%. I mean, it's funny. Megadeth was kind of like the corporate gig. You know what I mean? Yeah, it worked once in a while, and obviously when it worked, it was big. But it wasn't all the time, and it certainly wasn't even full time. I mean, it was, I think, when I went back to the group in 2010. Those first several years, probably through 2014 for sure. And then the Dystopia campaign, of course, that was that first year especially was busy. But after that, it was very sporadic, much more sparse. And that's when I got busy with my record label and the coffee company, and I started doing the Ellefson band, my own records. And then I actually, during 2021 is when I did the Ellefson Soto record. The Lucid, we even cut that record back in 2020 during COVID. Everything's got kind of a long timeline on it, just with release schedules and everything like that. So, but I stayed true to the release schedules. And honestly, when the Megadeth thing went away, it was like, well, all right, take that gig off. Anyway, what's next? Oh, we got the Lucid, we got Ellefson Soto. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So I've learned to just, you just keep moving, man, and just stay forward focused.
With I'm not going to go into details about the Megadeth stuff. It's everyone knows, it's been reported. Yeah. For you, like, do you think that chapter, I mean, that's a closed chapter for you now, but do you think even down the line that, like, you and Dave could ever even be kind of mates again or hang out again? Or, I mean, I don't know where that is at.
Well, there's only one thing that would have to change, and that's everything.
Now, you did mention something there that I wanted to touch on. Now, Frankie, good old Frankie from Anthrax, Altitudes and Attitude, is that kind of just on sleep mode at the moment, or is there something, is it just one of these things that, like, it's just there? I mean, everyone's busy, so it is something that could potentially
yeah. I never do these grandiose farewell, we're breaking up. It's like, oh, shut up. It's like, it's Look, first of all, it's only music, meaning we ain't curing cancer here, right? You know, we're not sending a man to the moon. We're writing songs, and that's not to downplay that, because that's a special gift we all have. But you know, in the business of music, you know, you come at it with a professional hat, a grown-up, mature approach. And hey, when we're working, hey, look, none of these things were ever meant to replace the main gigs, and that's what Frankie and I always said. Is at that time, hey, I'm in Megadeth, he's in Anthrax. This is something we're doing on the side. It was, and quite honestly, I loved doing it with Frank, because you know we all know Frank is this kind of big, smiley, fist in the air Anthrax guy. You know, I got to know a whole other Frank, which now we all know because he's written a book that he put out, and that book is that story that I got to know about Frank 5 years earlier, or when we were doing Altitudes and Attitude, and as he was bringing these songs in, songs that had this nice, simple, you know, just kind of very bright color and sound to them. Behind it was a very dark and heavy lyric. And that's when I got to know Frank's real story of his life. And through that, I'm glad that Joe MacGyver, who wrote my book with me, My Life with Death, that he was able to connect with him to write that story for Frank. And so I think Altitudes and Attitude, I almost look at that as that was the on-ramp for Frank to start sort of his second act, if you will. You know what I mean? Where he really got to tell his story. He didn't just have to be a member amongst members with Anthrax. He could really tell about him, because, you know, these things can be very frustrating in bands. Because we've started them decades ago. We were different people. We were young men, and you know, we start these bands, and at the time, we go along to get along. We assume these certain roles, and you know, by our 30s, maybe we're starting families. By our 40s, we're just, you know, music has changed around us. Our bands are, God, we're still going to keep doing this, and then suddenly we land at our 50s and go, God, the phone's ringing now more than it was before, and then now we're a classic, you know, like a classic rock act, right? Yeah. And who would have thought that we'd be these guys, right? So, but yet, you know, we're still operating under those same roles and some of those same identities. So I was really happy for Frank that he, you know, got this opportunity, and you know, we brought him over to Jackson and Charbel. Now he's got his Charbel signature bass that we worked with him on, and got that up and running. So you know, Frankie is a true friend and a real brother to me, and so it's been great to just watch him flourish and still be the kick-ass guy that we know him to be in Anthrax. Just, I think, just that much more alive and really able to walk in the room with his head held high now that he has his own story out there too.
Will we get some European, UK, European headliner Dieth shows down the line, like a club run or something like that?
Yes to all. Yeah, look, our first shows we started kind of anchored it with some festivals. Grass Pop, the Czech Republic, we're doing the Vagos Festival in Portugal, Motoculture in France. So they kind of anchored it with that. And then, you know, right before that, we lined up 3 shows in Poland, and then all of a sudden, you know, these Testaments opportunities opened up for us, and you know, we wanted to try to even do more of them if we could, but just the way the logistics and schedule works. So we have Berlin and Hanover with Testament, and you know, Testament have been great friends. I mean, look, we took them out with us with Megadeth and Slayer many times over the years. So it's great that, you know, we're friends, and this is how it works, you know. So when I was up here bringing Testament up, and now, you know, I'm down here starting something new, they're bringing me up, and that's how our business works. It's how this thing works, and so I'm super appreciative for the friendships and for the opportunities that allow for all of us to. You know, Dave Lombardo is another one. You know, in Slayer, they would always play after Megadeth. I think he's in Suicidal Tendencies opening for Megadeth, and he's still Dave Lombardo. We don't give a shit who goes on first or last. We're musicians. We're artists, and we're just all out making music and entertaining our fans. So, you know, who goes first and last, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm so impressed with Testament and their footprint that they have in Europe as a headliner. I'm blown away. I'm honored to be on the stage with them. I think it's really freaking cool how well they've done. You know?
Kings of Thrash, is that would that be something that you might consider pulling over this part of the planet?
Yes, 100%. You know, in fact, we're going to Australia in July, so I'm spending this whole next month here, you know, on full Dieth mode, and then we have these 4 shows. We're going to go down to Australia and do that, then back up to Europe for, you know, another couple months of Dieth work. So, same thing with Kings of Thrash. You know, it's like we propped it up. We did some tours. We put out the live record. Jeff Young and I are continuing to work on some new music, some stuff we started like a year ago. So we're working on that now. And so, yeah, all these things are just kind of always a work in progress. And, you know, look, the world is our oyster, right? I mean, all the world's a stage, as it were. And that really is true. I mean, it's like the phone rings to the most random places.
Look, last question here for you. Look, just looking back over your career, and I mean, you've done a lot, man. There's no question, and you're continuing to do a lot. You were there around about the beginning of the explosion of kind of everything when metal really took hold, and it's been an incredible journey. You're one of the few artists that was really there to see it all kind of unfold around you. If you were to kind of consider to yourself, like, what would be one of the standout kind of proudest moments for you? Like, what stands out as being, God, I remember that was just fucking awesome. Like, that was awesome.
Oh, lucky for you, I have a very recent one. When we pushed out the Dieth song, Walk With Me Forever, that I sang my very first lead vocal in my professional career. So that's a very recent one. It's funny that they don't have to be years ago. There's those, right? I think probably the other one, I mean, look, let's go back to the beginning, right? You know, 1983, I land in Hollywood, and, you know, Motley Crue, Rat, Quiet Riot, Wasp were all taking off. The US Festival just happened. Van Halen was at their ultimate, you know, pentultimum, you know, moment. Judas Priest. And so it was just a great moment for heavy metal. The Scorpions, everything, you know, everybody was Iron Maiden, you know, the biggest of the big were already out there. And then next up was the Big Four. You know, we were up to bat. And it was kind of like I showed up in Hollywood, you know, a young man, ready to go, ready to do the work and put in the time. And I think just as an era, it was not easy. I left a very comfortable life on the farm in Minnesota where I grew up to go, you know, join the forces of rock and roll, and dove into complete, absolute destitute poverty for the next 5 or 6 years. But, you know, as Eddie Van Halen called it, it was called the eating musician soup, you know, and that's what it is. And if you don't eat the soup, you don't get to go to the big dance, you know. So I'm glad I did it.
You survived and you lived to tell the tale, and let there be more. Let there be more of it. So look, Dave, thank you so much for your time. And just once again, this new album is just absolutely fantastic. For anybody out there, please check it out. Dieth to Hell and Back, release date on June 2nd on Napalm Records, and it will blow your fucking head off. So get in on it. Thank you so much, David Ellefson, for joining us on Overdrive. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.